Good evening, everyone. The first reading that we'll do is from April 29th, if I can find it. Here it is. And this is it's an excerpt from the poem Samadhi, which is out of the chapter An Experience in Cosmic Consciousness. So this is for April 29th. Not an unconscious state, or mental chloroform without willful return. Samadhi but extends my conscious realm, beyond limits of the mortal frame, to the farthest boundary of eternity, where I, the cosmic sea, watch the little ego floating in me. In order to try to understand these lines, I want to do a little visualization or thought experiment. So go ahead and use your mind to kind of zoom out of this, just as on Google Maps or Google Earth, you can press the zoom out button, and whatever street you're on, then you can see the city and so on. Further and further out you go. Go ahead and do that mentally now. Zoom out from wherever you are. You can see the city, fine, keep zooming out, see your country, see the planets, see that solar system, keep zooming out, see the galaxy with all of those solar systems in the galactic center. Keep zooming out and see that there's many galaxies. And now here's one point of this. There's no limit to how far you can zoom out. That where is the furthest boundary of eternity, which is in this line of this poem, that there is no boundary. That Master said you can keep expanding and expanding because ultimately everything exists in mind. But let's go back to our visualization. You're out there floating around the galaxies, or however far out you pressed on your zoom button there. Here's the important point. You, yes, you are still there. That somewhere, if you now zoom all the way back in, there you are. That even when you're in that expanded out state, that somewhere in there, you're still in there. And that's the actual interesting thing, that you're always there. And I'm talking about it in space right now. Maybe we'll talk about it in time also. But from that state where you're zoomed out and you can see all the different galaxies, and you are at the cosmic sea at that point, you still can watch the little ego floating in me. That you're identifying yourself with God consciousness when you identify yourself with all of the other planets and all of creation like that. But the most fascinating thing is that you are still there. You're always there, no matter what you do. And to try to have that visualization in your mind that you are one with the entire creation, and yet you're still in it. It's a fascinating thing. And then let's do the thought experiment in the other direction. Let's then hit the zoom button, or the zoom in, and go from your present state of consciousness, which is confined by your physical body, but then zoom somewhere inside yourself. You could, see a blood cell, and then go in even deeper and see an atom, and then electrons, and then only God and the great scientists know what come after that when you collide all these little particles together. I don't know the names of these things, quarks and God particles. And the point there is, as you keep going in and in and in, you're still there. And when you zoom back out quickly like that, and you see that your body is actually that container for so much that is actually on the inside, that there's a different line in this poem, colossal container, I, of all things made. And whether you want to look at your colossal container when you're zoomed out as the entire galaxy, or your colossal container as your physical body, which on the inside has so much more going on, that's up to you. In fact, right there, if you really think about those things, you'll be able to understand that space itself is a delusion. It's very good to ponder these things. Now, without taking up too much more time, I just want to bring up the first lines of this little reading. And it was, not an unconscious state. Samadhi but extends my conscious realm to farthest boundary of eternity. So that in deep meditation, we're not going subconscious. We're not going to sleep. That what we're doing is we're staying conscious, but then our consciousness normally is locked up in the five senses. Our consciousness in terms of feeling is used to feeling what's going on in our body, if a cold breeze is coming or whatever, something like that. But we want to, in deep meditation, take our conscious mind and expand it all the way out until we begin to feel our omnipresence. And yes, we did a thought experiment, but it happens much more as you begin to identify with your astral body and understand that you're not confined by this little physical body. and then you can use your conscious mind in your astral body, and it's a very interesting thing that you begin to feel that you are more, so much more than this little body, and slowly you begin to identify with a greater consciousness. I'll wrap this little section up just by one interesting thing that Swami Kriyananda would say often. He would talk about wanting to expand into this state of omnipresence or superconsciousness, but then he would say, but you're not even omnipresent in your own little body. And he would leave it at that for people to think about. But whether you want to zoom in or zoom out, either way you'll get there. But if you do become omnipresent in your own little body, you will become omnipresent in the entire universe. That Swamiji would say, the furthest galaxy is as close as your own hand. It's a very interesting thing to think about. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Premdas now, and we'll move on to the next reading.
Thank you, Jemal. That was very good visualization. So now I'm going to do April 30th reading. This is also from the same chapter, chapter 14, An Experience in Cosmic Consciousness. So the reading goes like this. One might have the whole universe and find the Lord elusive still. Spiritual advancement is not measured by one's outward powers, but only by the depth of his bliss in meditation. So now, looking into this reading again, so many times we imagine that looking at the world around, so if you turn on your news channel or you go into you walk in the streets, you always see these people's eyes go from left to right into the most beautiful things or the most beautiful ads, most colorful cars or dresses. So we always think that these people are the most powerful and happy people in the world, some celebrities or who are enjoying life, you think outwardly. But really, it's not so. As according to Yukteswarji says, only by the depth of his bliss in meditation. That's the only measure how you can measure. So, and the context here is, this is a very, in a way, subtly, it's a very humorous thing, like when Master Paramahansa Yogananda ji experiences Samadhi, and now after experiencing Samadhi, he asks his Guru, when can I find the God? When shall I see him? And now Swami Shri Yukteswarji smiles at him and says, what are you trying to think, that God is like wearing a crown and he's just sitting in the corner of the galaxy, they're looking, what are you trying to imagine? This is God when you experience the bliss in meditation. So in that way, it's such a beautiful episode here. I want to turn back to Jemal.
Thanks, Premdas. That's just a fascinating thing to contemplate, that bliss is God, and that is the thing that we should ultimately be striving for. It's something that will always keep us on track if we remember that, because it's very, very easy to get sidetracked on the spiritual path, on anything in life, no matter what we try to focus on, that detours will always come. But on the greatest project, the project of all projects of finding God, that we do not want to get detoured, we do not want to get sidetracked. And if we remember that God is joy and that we're ultimately seeking joy, then we won't get off track. Swami Kriyananda's email ID was seekjoy@ananda.org. But it was such a simple thing. It's really simple, actually. Anyway, that brings us into this next reading, this topic of joy. And this one is from May 3rd. And this is how quickly we weary of earthly pleasures. Desire for material things is endless. Man is never satisfied completely, and pursues one goal after another. The something else, and that's in quotes, the something else he seeks is the Lord, who alone can grant lasting joy. This also is in chapter 14, the experience or an experience in cosmic consciousness. I chose this one because a humorous episode of my life made a deep impact on me. That it's humorous that after dinner one time I was wandering around in the kitchen just looking for that something else. I just didn't feel satisfied by dinner, and I just was looking for some little snack or dessert or something that would just bring that satisfaction. And I was joking about it with another monk who was there, but he said this quote to me, just in a joking manner also, that you're looking for that something else. And I knew that he was referring to this line in the Autobiography of a Yogi. I'm just going to read it again. Desire for material things is endless. Man is never satisfied completely and pursues one goal after another. The something else he seeks is the Lord, who alone can grant lasting joy. And so in the kitchen that evening, it hit me very strongly that this can just go on and on looking for that perfect snack or whatever it is, but that it's never going to work. And I honestly don't remember whether I had the snack or not, but it made a deep impact that, okay, we have to try to do our best to enjoy this world and whatever, feed our body properly, and just, it's not that we want to become apathetic in life and just sad and just think, oh, I just eat to feed the body. We should enjoy it, but that joy also, we should know that it's a reflection of some even greater joy of God on the inside, and constantly be offering that up for fine-tuning, you could say. That if you're aware enough to know that that joy actually isn't in that food, but is in you, and then if you can offer that up to God, that you realize that that this world around us is actually just a reflection, and it's a reflection of our own joy, our own reactions. And then we can learn how to offer everything up, even the bad things, and still feel joy on the inside. But, so I'm talking about food here right now, but you begin to realize that you can expand this out to absolutely everything. It's not just food, and that it kind of, in the beginning, it's a little bit sad. You start to think, oh my gosh, nothing's going to work. Absolutely nothing's going to work. And that is like stage one. You realize that, but then you realize that it is God who is going to work. And then in that you can begin to live a life of joy on the outside. And we all find our balance. Master, used to say that simple living and high thinking, that this is the way that we should go through life. But each person gets to define what simple living is for his own self, that there's no Ananda police out there, and that God himself is not a tyrant waiting to throw you into jail because you broke his one rule and your living wasn't simple enough. That you get to figure out, what does it mean to you, what is simple living? And you'll find anything and everything in between on the spiritual path. That Ram Gopal Muzumdar just lived in a very, very simple hut. I believe it was just made out of bamboo and mud or sticks. I don't remember, but as I was reading about it the other night, it seemed very, very simple. And then you read about Lahiri Mahashaya, who got his initiation in a palace where the walls were literally made out of gold with gemstones in them. And those are both extremes, and you'll find true yogis in both of those extremes and everywhere in between. But the point here is that you get to choose what your mode of simple living is, but make sure that you have that high thinking. And that the most important thing of it all is, as Premdas was saying earlier, is joy. That we just have to keep seeking joy, and we have to let that be our guide and not get distracted by power or any of the other major distractions on the spiritual path. When we let joy be our guide, everything works out. So I'll hand it back over to Premdas now.
So now I'm going to do the reading on May 5th, this tomorrow's. Human life is beset with sorrow until we know how to tune in with the divine will, whose right course is often baffling to the egoistic intelligence. God bears the burden of the cosmos. He alone can give unerring counsel. This is like the last line in the chapter 14 again, Experience in Cosmic Consciousness. So I'll try to repeat the important part again. Human life is beset with sorrow until we know how to tune in with the divine will. So I'm going to share with you some small experience of my own now. This was maybe a few years ago. So what happened? I had to attend an event. So this was like 10 days before the event happened. So I had to choose. I had already booked a train ticket, and now I had the option to, if I had to attend the event, to cancel my train ticket and book an air ticket to attend the event. So I was still thinking, should I make that extra move? This is just a small example. Now, how divine will can help even in the small things, I'll just tell you now. So what happened that day, luckily in the evening I made the choice, but in the afternoon I somehow got to visit a place. I was staying in Bangalore then, it was called Pyramid Valley. I just got to go there, somehow had the time, meditated for I had a very good meditation there. So after the meditation, somehow my mind, this thought came up finally after I got up from my meditation. But somehow I just felt that it was somehow not feeling good to make that move, to cancel my ticket of railway ticket. So in the evening I just made the call and I said, sorry, I'll not be able to attend the event. Yeah. And after 10 days, what happens? The rain is pouring like anything on that day, and the evening, the event, not many people, even very few people attended, and the event wasn't really what it was. So that's how, even in the small things, how if you are centered and if you know what, sometimes it helps. I think you all know many examples in your own lives when you made those choices. So and it also says its right course is often baffling to egoistic intelligence. Yeah, it somehow, it does not fit in any logic. This intuition somehow, many times, sometimes it might fit, but other times the way it says to go, it does not fit. It's somewhat like some Google Maps nowadays. It shows all these random small routes, but still it takes you to the destination. And it avoids all these traffics, lanes and everything. Even if he's the experienced person on the street, he has traveled in the same, he knows all of Pune now, for example, where we are living. The Google Map somehow knows even the shortest route than him, because it has the overall view. And this is what is important. The divine will is that, like that view.
Thanks. That's a really wonderful thing to contemplate, that we can tune in with God who has that vision and knows exactly how we should go, that only He can give unerring counsel. Amazing, because I'm laughing that Swami Kriyananda made this Nayaswami order, and I believe that there are some saints in this Nayaswami order. But the interesting thing about the Nayaswami order is that many of the Nayaswamis are married. And I thought, gosh, it must be tough to be married to one of these saints who's always right. Could you imagine that? I mean, that you spend day and night together with someone always, and you think, well, I think we should, maybe it'll turn out good. No, wrong again. And it must be very difficult. But those great souls who have that fortune, that I'm sure that they get to grow very quickly. That it's an interesting thing that I'm bringing up here. It's a little bit off topic, but we think that, if only I could have spent time with Paramahansa Yogananda and lived with him, or been in the same house and living with Swami Kriyananda. Those who did that, they say you have no idea how difficult it was to keep up with his level of energy, to be with someone who's always right, and always trying to push you to grow even further, and would never give you one moment of rest in an egoic sense, to think, poor little me, I need this or that. But those who did that they grew so much spiritually. And anyway, it is a great blessing, but it's not easy by any means. That actually it's the Guru's job to just destroy our ego, and sometimes it won't be an easy, blissful ride. But at the end, those who get that good fortune, that they are always grateful for it. Even Paramahansa Yogananda wrote in the Autobiography of a Yogi that he was grateful for every metaphorical tooth that Sri Yukteswar knocked loose from his jaw, that in order him to be able to achieve omnipresence. Anyways, I'm not sure how we got onto that line of thinking, but the next reading here is from May 4th, and again the same chapter, and outward longings drive us from the Eden within. They offer false pleasures which only impersonate soul happiness. The lost paradise is quickly regained through divine meditation. As God is unanticipatory ever newness, we never tire of Him. Can we be surfeited with bliss, delightfully varied throughout eternity? So the first thing that I want to talk about is these desires that we have. And every great religion, every true religion, says that the crux of all of our suffering is desire. And it's these longings that take us outside of ourselves, that say, this thing outside of me is going to make me happy. But really, Kriya Yoga is the thing that can help us withdraw our energy, withdraw our mind back on the inside, and we can dive within, even much better than with Google Maps and pressing the zoom in button. And we can begin to feel this pleasure, this joy that is on the inside. I really like this sentence. The lost paradise is quickly regained through divine meditation. It's that word quickly that I really like, because as we start gaining this realization that, okay, true joy is on the inside and I need to spend more time on the inside, that at Ananda we have a company in Italy called The Inner Life. When I first showed up at Ananda, I just thought, what does that mean, the inner life? Because all I had known was an outer life. It made no sense to me. What would an inner life look like? What would that be? I mean, what would you be doing in there? Do you have friends in there? Or what's going on this inner life? But as we begin to meditate, we realize that there really is an inner life, that there are worlds within worlds, and that as we really learn to watch our thoughts, watch our energy, we realize how much is going on inside of us and how much joy there is. And we want to cultivate an inner life. We want to cultivate inner stillness. We want to cultivate control of our emotions, of our thoughts. And we begin to realize how powerful this is and how much joy it brings. And, very interestingly, how much more effective human beings we are then in our outer life. Once we gain control of ourselves, once we gain the ability to learn how to focus and concentrate and just hold our mind on one task until it's finished, we can do much, much more in this world once we do have an inner life. The average human being doesn't understand that. He just works himself to frustration outwardly, and in the end wondered, why didn't it work? I tried as hard as everybody else. And some blissful yogi might just show up and do the same job in a few minutes, but it's because he has concentration. He has an understanding of magnetism. If you're out there, if you're listening, you're a true yogi, do try to understand what is magnetism. That it's a very important topic for us to understand. But all of that is to say that there is an inner world, there is an inner life, and that the lost paradise is quickly regained through divine meditation. Often people will ask, why? Why did God make this? How did this happen? And sometimes these questions are useful, but imagine a marathon runner who's been training for a year and finally the big day comes, the Mumbai Marathon, and he's out there running. In the middle, should he really ask, why am I doing this? No. He should just finish the marathon. And then afterwards he can ask himself, do I want to do this again next year? Is this a good idea? And really on this spiritual path, that how did we get into this mess? It's not the best question. You can ponder it a little bit, but really the answer is so deep within that we're only going to realize it once we regain the lost paradise. Sri Yukteswar said, leave some questions to be answered in samadhi. That's not his exact words, but in God consciousness. And those biggest questions, it's good to ask them, but don't spin yourself in circles with them. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this reading is actually two things. One, that God is unanticipatory ever newness. They say that God sneaks in like a thief in the night, and that when you start feeling this joy, you wonder, where did it come from? And then you realize, my gosh, it's always been within. It's not caused, that it isn't this cause and effect thing, that it's always just here, and it's always now. But it's these words, ever newness, that if it didn't have that ever new aspect, we wouldn't strive for joy, because every joy that we've ever known, we get there and then it falls apart on us. And then we go running out again. And that's the thing, we go running out instead of go running in, looking for some other kind of joy. But when we go on the inside, that it's always there, yet it's ever new, that it never gets old, it never gets stale. And that's the thing, which I said there's 2 points. The second point is delightfully varied throughout eternity. That if it wasn't ever new, we wouldn't want it for eternity. And it's a very good thing to contemplate eternity. That I was reading in the Autobiography of Yogi a few nights ago, Sri Yukteswar went to an ashram of some great master, and they would read one line from the Bhagavad Gita, and then they'd meditate for a half hour. Then the master would say, does anyone want to make a comment? Nobody would make a comment. He'd make one comment. Okay, let's meditate again for an hour. Now is everybody understood? And then one, yeah, I understood. No, you didn't understand. Everybody, you're dismissed. But if you meditate like that on eternity, you will begin to understand that you yourself are an eternal being. You also will begin to understand these three words, Sat, Chit, Anand, and that you fool yourself and you say, no, I'm not eternal. I'm just in this physical body. It's going to go in 30 plus years, whatever the case may be, and then something else happens, but I'm not eternal. I don't know what happens. But as you begin to realize who you truly are, you realize you're eternal, but you only want to make that admission when it is combined with ever new joy. If it's ever new suffering, nobody wants to be eternal. But when it's ever new joy, we say, yeah, I think I could handle ever new joy. And then the third thing that goes in with that is that our consciousness has to be expanded out to infinity for us to enjoy that ever new bliss. So now I'll hand it over for the last few minutes to Premdas.
Yes. Now I'm going to go for May 7th. This is the chapter, The Cauliflower Robbery. If you haven't read it, you should read it. Huh? Divine contemplation must not be made an excuse for material carelessness. Divine contemplation must not be made an excuse for material carelessness. So in this chapter, as you know, Master Paramahansa Yogananda ji gets some very good cauliflowers for his Guru. And Guru says, yeah, keep it with you. I'm going to use it for a special dinner tomorrow. And he keeps it and they start their walking in the beach of Puri. So what happens in Yukteswar ji somehow tricks this person's mind and he goes and robs all these cauliflowers. And that time Sri Yukteswar ji says this sentence. How true it is, like in the name of sometimes divine contemplation, we sometimes end up doing some few things. So we should always be, even as we are going in the spiritual path, it's not an excuse for us to stop, like even simple things, stop taking a bath. Yeah, it's also needed because you need to take care of your body as long as you stay on this earth. And there's one more quote somewhere else in the same. Yukteswar ji says, you need not worry. I'm going to remind you when you have reached that state. So till then you'll have to take care of all these things. So, and I also wanted to tell few things. Yeah, anyway, last few minutes. So I thought, yeah, tomorrow is May 5th, Rajarshi Janakananda's birthday. So I think Master used to say that during this times, saints' powers could be felt if you meditate on them. So Saint Lin was one of the highest, foremost, like one of the best devotees, in the sense the highest disciples. So it's good to meditate on him, and he's one of the main reasons how Master he came into earth to help Master in this mission.